my favorite dev diaries that show the game is having fundamentally massive changes by changing some of the smaller back-end features. That's right, I said big and small in the same sentence. It makes sense, you'll see. Hearts of Iron 4 dev diary small feature number 1. Let's hope there's loads of these small changes, because anytime they change the back end of Hoi 4, the very small back end mechanics, the game plays completely different. And I feel like I'm learning a brand new game all over again. Anyway, let's dig deep and see what's going on. The 3 main changes. Divisional structure is changing. The way the back end of the economy and consumer goods is changing. And presets for planes, tanks, and ships. And any other things they could be changing in future. The first thing that jumps out at me is that they're using NATO icons. I'm dying. I can't believe it. Why? Anyway, divisional structure is changing. Battalions now will be separated into 2 different categories: support and maneuver brigades. So before they were just like plain old battalions, but now we can see that these are mobile combat support battalions and combat support battalions. Okay, this is completely different. So it looks like there's 3 options here, each costing 25 XP, and then we have 2 subcategories of mobile battalions and armored battalions. Are they trying to say here there's different kinds of infantry battalions, combat support and mobile support? Okay. Artillery AA and AT are now in their own category, meaning you need to choose how many support brigades you have and how many maneuver brigades you have. This extends to mobile battalion and armored battalion categories. Now your brigade also starts with the bottom slot locked, making the 5x4 grid. This is a default state of divisions. You can unlock the 5th slot by unlocking the doctrines, giving you a 5x5 grid. Okay, that kind of makes sense. And you can see it broke down here. So when you unlock this one on the mobile warfare, superior firepower, the different paths for each of the doctrines, basically, you unlock the bottom slot. So let's just look at the numbers here. So 4 times 5 is 20, and there'll be 2 combat widths. So the maximum combat width, you kind of make, if you just make it all infantry, is a 40 width. That usually wouldn't be ideal because that wouldn't be the meta. You usually want to go 42 or 44. Therefore, if you get the final slot, it'll allow you to go all the way up to the maximum combat width. You never really want to do anyway. So I guess the question with this one is, what difference is this fundamentally going to make? At the end of the day, I can still reach 40 width without the bottom slot. So what difference is this going to make to the game? Alternatively, if I was going to fill it full of line artillery, which you never want to do because it's really bad for organization, it's really bad for production, really bad for HP, the maximum combat width you get would be 60, ignoring the bottom slots. Once again, not something you'd want to do, but it just shows the full potential of combat width. It's not really going to make much of a difference if this is the only change that's going to be made. It's really interesting to see that now they're calling each one of these a brigade, where before this was called a battalion. Is this a terminology change? Does this fall more in line with the divisions that we have today? And you can see here, this increases the brigade slot by +1. So once you unlock this doctrine, you unlock an extra slot. I kind of like this. I like the fact that you're progressing with your doctrines, and it shows that your division is changing based upon that as well. Will it make a massive fundamental change to the game, though? That's the question. In multiplayer, it definitely will. Because no longer can you make the meta combat widths initially. You need to work up to that, which could be like something you would race for, because when you would get the first one, you would have an advantage over other players. But in a single player setting, I feel like this is not going to change how I play the game. A lot of the time in most of my games, it gets around about 30 combat width from building up from the equipment and manpower pool, but they never really reach the 40s. So once again, would I ever take advantages? I'm not sure. So if you're going to make a 14-4, that's going to be 40 combat width, isn't it? But then you've got some slots left over, I suppose. So once again, I still ask the question, what fundamental difference will this make outside of a multiplayer setting? I really feel like it won't. I feel like I understood the battalion thing, but I really don't understand this. Guys, fill me in. I feel like I've read it, but I just don't fully understand it. Are these individual categories, or are they just narrowing down infantry battalions now into mobile categories and leg battalions? I don't even understand how this changes any different. Okay, I think it's just dawned on me what they're saying here. So let's compare the changes. So the way it currently works is whenever you make a battalion, you can go all the way to the bottom. However, now these bottom slots are locked behind a doctrine, so you can't progress down these immediately. And the other change is you can now no longer mix artillery and infantry types together. So this would be an illegal build. So it either has to be an entire row of artillery or an entire row of infantry. So let's just play with this for a second. So if we were going to go for the classic 14-4, very popular multiplayer games, we could still do it. Okay. I suppose the only difference is now is it's a little bit more difficult to get the really big 40 combat widths and combine them with armor. Because this would be too much armor. And this is kind of more realistic. But then again, it's still a 40 combat width. The point I'm trying to get at here, guys, is that it makes me wonder when you sit down with a new version, what difference it's going to make overall to the game. So in the past, you could mix different types of armor. You'll still be able to do that. And also in the past, you could mix your infantry battalions and your line artillery stuff together. So like infantry as well as some anti-air, you could do this. But now this is an illegal build. You couldn't do this. You wouldn't be able to do this in the new version. This requires some good brainstorming because right now I can't fathom how this makes a big fundamental difference to the game. I embrace change, but I question to myself, how will this make me design my divisions differently? The only thing I could see differently is now it's a little bit more difficult to do the division that does everything. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, if I was to do something like this, a 44 width, the organization's just a little bit on the low end. However, it's still kind of doable. So what difference will this make to the game? I'm not sure. Guys, listen, I don't get it, but if you guys have got a suggestion below, please comment. I'm really curious. Next up, the economy has changed. Instead of a plain old consumer goods usage, it's now a consumer goods factor. To cut to the chase, I feel like this is a long explanation, but in short, it means you can no longer get 0% consumer goods or minus consumer goods anymore. It basically means you can get really low consumer goods, particularly as a major power. However, it's near impossible to have absolute zero consumer goods. It's kind of a sliding scale other than just an absolute number. And it says minor nations are going to benefit from this more, meaning you'll be able to take advantage of the lower consumer goods earlier on for the curve to get significantly lower near the bottom, where it will have less of an impact overall. Nations like China, for instance, that can like permit the opium trade reduces your consumer goods by like 15% by a massive amount, which gets to the stage where your consumer goods can go into the minus, which doesn't make any difference anyway. So the long-term implication is nations that can stack a lot of consumer goods reductions are getting a bit of a nerf. But nations that don't have a lot of consumer goods reductions potentially can benefit more from this. Once again, I'm just taking a guess. I need to get my hands on it to actually know what difference it's going to make. But overall, it seems like a good change to me because it always seemed like a bit of a strange number. Like it just you could hit absolute zero consumer goods, which I thought was a bit silly in all fairness. And you can see now, war economy, expected number of factories put on consumer goods is 20%. And additional factors applied on top of that to reduce the consumer goods more. So it'll be a more sliding gradual curve than hitting absolute zero on consumer goods. And here's the equation for that. Numbers. Moving on. Last, but definitely not least, if you want to create your perfect dream tank, plane or ship, who does that? You can now do that by having a preset. So the preset button is available to you, and then whenever you want to access your favorite tank design, you can just go into presets and select the tank. In the previous dev diary, I wasn't sure if this was just selecting historical tanks, which I do think is cool. But it looks to me, the way they're describing it, is you can use your own pre-made designs and go back to them. It's sad in a way, because I feel like this might railroad you to make the same meta tank design over and over again. And you're less inclined to kind of experiment. I think I'm talking from my own point of view here. I always use the meta designs every single time. Anyway, there you go. The Tiger tank is now your preset. I can use my historical designs. Or my own homemade designs. Next week, we'll be bringing you more information on the new system for content, along with how it will be tied into your stories, you can tell, with this expansion and beyond. Ooh, that's interesting. It's quite broad, but it's hard for me to find what it actually will be talking about. It says here as well, this feature is entirely moddable, so if you want your MP mods to have the latest meta builds, there are presets you can do that. So this would be cool if you had like a mod that would allow you to only make the historical designs. So therefore, Germans are forced into kind of like super fast tanks early game, but then forced into the slower, heavy cumbersome tanks later game. Where, like, for instance, I don't know, you could say the exact same for the Americans too. They start off with some clunky designs and then they get some better ones later in the game. And the Soviets focusing on more quantity over quality, for instance. And that'd be kind of cool, really. That would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Allow you to roleplay that in-game. Anyway, lads, enjoy Dev Diaries. Don't forget to check out this one because this is another Hoi 4 video that's right up your alley. I'll see you guys next time.